Hi, it's G with Aroma G's Botanica, and this is the Christmas Conjure class. So, the season of joy and holiday spirit seems like a sort of unusual time to be laying down tricks. Or is it? Who's about practicality? So, there's no better time to sort of hit your target than the season when everyone's defenses are completely down, either from like holiday stress or the bustle of getting everything done, or through their innate drive to be more loving and accepting during the Christmas season. In walks the creative and timely root worker or the cunning witch. This is the perfect time to do some sneaky tricks to get in on your enemies when they at least suspect it. But first, I want to talk about the history of Yule. Today, Yule used to be a lesser extent in the English-speaking word as a primary synonym for Christmas. People think of Yule and Christmas as the same thing when they have ties to each other, but they're different. Present-day Christmas customs and also practices such as things like the Yule log, the Yule goat, the Yule boar. You may not have heard of things like the Yule goat before. They do exist, and they were used for a very long time. But there's also Yule singing, and other things come from pagan Yule. Today, the event is commemorated in heathenry as well as a few other types of modern paganism. The pagan holiday known as Yule takes place on the day of the winter solstice, around December 21st. It's when the planet's axis turns away from the sun in the northern hemisphere. And there in the north, wintertime solstice has been commemorated for centuries. The Norse people called it Jul, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Jul, and they saw it as a time for feasting and merriment and just partying in general. So these Icelandic people and their legends consider it to be a time of sacrifice. Other traditional customs like the Yule log and the decorated tree and wassailing do have Norse and Germanic origins. It was Queen Victoria's husband, who was German, actually part of her family was too, that brought back the Christmas tree to England. But in Norse tradition, fathers and sons would go out and they would drag home the biggest log they could find, and it would be decorated with ribbons, and they would then set it on fire. The Yule log not only warmed their home, but it also looked into the future. Each spark was said to represent a pig or a calf that was supposed to be born in the spring, so they would know what the coming season brought for them as far as their cattle and prosperity was. And the Norse also brought evergreens into the house to remind them that life persisted even through the darkness of the winters. While all other plants were struggling to survive, it was the evergreen that seemed impervious to the winter and the diminishing of the sun. So as long as that Yule log burned, which was about 12 days, the feasting and the partying continued. It was the theme of those days. This was one of the few times that meat was in abundance since cattle had just been slaughtered for the long winter, and this made a perfect opportunity for a feast. But Yule was also considered to be a scary time of year. With everything outside was cold and dead, it was the perfect time for ghosts and demons to roam the land. The Germans were especially frightened of the god Odin, who would fly through the sky on his 8-legged horse and decide who would prosper and who would perish in the coming year. So they considered it a safe thing to do to stay inside the house during the winter to stay out of his way. So, was the modern day Santa partly influenced by the god Odin? In most stories, Odin sat on the back of the horse, but in many other Norse myths, there were very common animals with uncommon abilities to fly. Then they would pull sleighs or chariots for the gods and goddesses. This is where we're getting reindeer from. So even the names of Santa's reindeer evoke Odin. There's Donner and Blitzen, and these words are similar to the Germanic words for thunder and lightning, both of which were things that were commanded by Odin, thunder and lightning. And there are many cultures all over the world with winter events that are really parties. They're just big parties of light. Along with Christmas, there's Hanukkah. It has its brightly lit menorahs. There are Kwanzaa candles, all sorts of things with that. It's based on light and candles and bringing in the light. And as a festival of the sunlight, one of the most vital parts of any Yule event is to light candles and bonfires. These winter festivals were also typical in like Greece, Rome, and along the British Isles. So 1 week before the winter solstice, Romans began celebrating Saturnalia. Some people say it started as a single day. Other people now think that it lasted a full month. It may have only been a week. And it was named after the god Saturn, which actually means plenty. And part of this celebration was the tradition of turning the social order completely upside down. It was a festival of misrule, where masters served their servants and their clothes were worn inside out or back to front. And all sorts of mischief and ran amok in the streets. People would be drinking wine and half nude when normally you might be arrested for that. So it was a time where all things, you could do all things you wanted to, and nobody was going to say anything. It was a big debauchery party, was what it was. So in England, there was something called the Lord of Misrule, which is probably taken from the Saturnalia. And also in Scotland, it was known as the Abbot of Unreason. A mock king was appointed and allowed free rein to be mischievous. In much earlier times, the poor guy was actually sacrificed. So you didn't want to be the Lord of Misrule, so that was not a good thing to draw that lot. But while drunken parties were going on in the streets, many of the upper class Romans were honoring Mithra, the god of the sun. It's said to be born on December 25th. Sound familiar? And it was believed that Mithra was born from a rock, not of a human woman, and shepherds came to worship this infant. Then a new religious movement called Christianity showed up. At first, its followers did not celebrate the birth of Christ, only his resurrection. It wasn't until the 4th century that his birth became a time for celebration. Not knowing Jesus' birthday, they used December 25th, which was Mithra's birthday, and so this became the Feast of the Nativity. So we transform from the symbolism of the rising sun to the rising sun, S-O-N. The new pecking order had problem transforming the pagans, though. They didn't want to give up their holidays, their feasts. Instead of trying to outlaw their traditions, what they did was they adopted them. Many Christian traditions were built on old pagan rituals and worship, causing many pagan symbols to be integrated right into the meaning of Christianity. Within a couple of centuries, the Christians had every person venerating a new holiday that was celebrated on December 25th. In some traditions of Wicca and paganism, the Yule event begins with the Celtic legend where the Oak King and the Holly King go to battle. The Oak King, which is the light of the new year, fights to take over the world of the Holly King. And this is a symbol of darkness, the Holly King. So reenactments of this battle are performed in some Wiccan rituals. So now let's talk about Christmas carols. Christmas carols were first sung in Europe thousands of years ago, but they weren't technically Christmas carols. They were pagan songs sung in the winter solstice. And while many carols we are familiar with have a definite Christian theme, the tradition of going door to door singing to your neighbors comes from a pagan tradition called wassailing, where the singers would march through the village singing to wish all good health and to banish all evil from the village. So the history of modern Christmas carols can be traced back to the people who lived in Britain during the Middle Ages. Around the 12th century, word spread as a man called St. Francis of Assisi, who was very popular throughout Italy, singing songs about Jesus Christ's birth. and they were considered to be the earliest known Christian songs that have survived throughout history. St. Francis of Assisi wanted people to rejoice about the birth of Jesus Christ and began organizing parades and nativity plays. The people jumped on this holiday bandwagon, so they began transforming their drinking songs into holiday carols by replacing the words with the ones that told the story of the Nativity, sung in their native language, not in Latin. So, Deck the Halls was originally a 16th century Wales song with lyrics such as Fill the mead and drain the barrel, which became Don We Now Our Gay Apparel. So, now let's talk about wreaths. The symbolism of wreaths has been used in funerals since the time of ancient Greece. They were to represent an eternal life because they were circular. These evergreen wreaths were laid at the burial places of early Christian martyrs in Europe, and they were said to represent the victory over the eternal spirit over death. Now, if we go over to Appalachia, wreaths were often made of fresh or dried flowers, and they were hung on the door to announce that there had been a death in the family. Sometimes a death notice was pinned to the wreath on the door. For 2 or 3 days during the mourning period, businesses owned by the deceased or the immediate family were generally closed. So these wreaths were also placed up on the door of the business, and it alerted patrons that there had been a death in the family, and this was the reason why their store or business wasn't open that day. In the same way that it kept salesmen away, over time the wreath became associated with not just death but protection. It was protection against death and would be hung on the door to keep the death out, so that no more deaths would occur. The Christmas wreath is so colorful and welcoming and is packed with all this tradition and symbolism, but ancient pagan people endowed trees with spirits. These spirits lived among the sheltered branches of evergreens because they were constantly green. They didn't go dormant in winter, so they figured the spirits would be safe in these trees and these bushes. And they were hung on the door or window. The wreath has been viewed as an invitation to the spirit of Christmas to enter your household. So it went from actually keeping people away during a funeral to inviting people in. Now, magically, some of the elements you can use in your Christmas wreath to give it sort of a protective flair are holly's one thing. Holly means holy and was used at Yule and Druid and Scandinavian pagan paths. It is said to protect the home and bring in good luck. It's often placed above a doorway for protection and to invite in helpful spirits. Then we have mistletoe. Mistletoe is used to keep away evil and enemies, and is used to keep away love jinxes, so that no one could come in and wreck your marriage or wreck your love. So you use mistletoe to keep that away, which is when, we kiss underneath the mistletoe, so that makes sense that you would keep that to protect the one that you're in love with. Then you have fern branches. And ferns are to protect evil from entering the house, and also you can use them for reversing hexes. Bay leaves and bay branches are often found in more decorative wreaths. Many may not know that including bay leaves into your door wreath, it's said to ward off evil and drive enemies away. You can also write on bay leaves and throw them into the burning fireplace, for it's sort of like making a wish, is what you would do. And many people use bay leaves as petition papers, especially this time of year. Any of these botanicals can be added to a holiday wreath with specific hoodoo oils. You can anoint the branches with things like Wall of Fire or Protect Me. Another would be Banish Negativity, which many people already use on their welcome mat to keep away people who mean to bring drama into their house. Devil Begone can be used to keep dark forces. House Blessing is used as sort of a lighter way to bring in good luck, joy, and blessings into the house. And sachet powders can be used the same way if added to a wreath by blowing them onto the branches. Spray the wreath with cinnamon essential oil to bring money into the house for the coming year. Now let's talk about ornaments and Christmas trees. So when the Christians began bringing in these evergreens as the pagans had done, they began decorating them with apples to signify the Garden of Eden. This was the beginning of Christmas ornaments. Ornaments can easily be turned into amulets of power and protection. And the great thing is you can leave them hanging right on the tree in front of full view. No one knows what you're doing. While we call them Christmas trees, these decorative evergreens long predate the celebration of Christmas. The modern Christmas tree is thought to have originated in 16th century Germany, where these small evergreen trees were decorated with candles and apples and nuts and berries. Paradise trees were in churches' plays. They were called paradise trees. And over time, devout Christians integrated these decorated trees into their homes during the holiday season. The tradition, which became a Christian ritual, began to spread all across Europe. German immigrants brought this practice to America, but it was quickly rejected by the Puritans because it was historically pagan. It had these historical pagan connotations which the Puritans did not like. While it took a while for it to catch on, small communities of German-born settlers documented the continuation of this practice as early as the mid-1700s. In the late 1840s, a published depiction of Queen Victoria celebrating Christmas with her German-born husband, Prince Albert, and their family around a decorated evergreen tree transformed the practice into a fashionable one. So by the late 1890s, Woolworth's department store in the United States was selling $25 million in German imported ornaments made of lead and hand-blown glass. As time went on, tree decorations became increasingly artful, incorporating new materials such as tinsel and silk and wool. Simple anointing can be done on any ornament to bring in the energy you're wanting for the new year. Make them more potent by including the proper color associations used in magic. For example, anoint green Christmas ornaments with money drawing oil. An empty glass bottle ornament can easily be filled with almost any herb, root, mineral, flower, ritual ingredient imaginable, anything you want. So here is one with cinnamon in it. It's just got a plain ornament. It's got cinnamon sticks in it and a key sort of to unlock your money potential for the year. Empty ornaments are also good for filling with petitions. So let's say a wife wants a straying husband to begin to stay at home and focus on her, their home, and his own family. She would write out or type an entire page of her petition, repeating these words over and over, stating her intention for him. She can then use things like decorative cutters, which you can find in craft stores, and cut up the petition in pieces. For example, you can use snowflake patterns and drop them into the ball with the strong intention that every time he looks at the tree and sees that ornament, he knows that he needs to stay at home, stay faithful. His faithfulness will go stronger. So do some things like throw in a couple of red berries to sort of help draw his eye to that particular ornament and hang it at eye level on the front of the tree. Including a magnolia leaf or a dried petal is even better, as it's used for marital fidelity. So that's just one scenario for creating a fixed ornament. You can use lavender buds and rose petals for like long-lasting love. Opaque ornaments can also be fixed, which you have less of a chance of being found out because you can't see inside them. So a prayer or petition can be dropped into a Christmas ball. Write on it using sigils or code, because if this ball is ever dropped and broken, the gig's up, they'll know what you did. Written in code, you can always explain it was a blessing. Non-breakable ornament might be best for this sort of trick. Also, you can glue the metal ornament cap onto the ball inside, sliding your petition after you slid your petition inside to ensure the cap won't come off and reveal what you've done. Ornaments that look like people, like Santa, a gingerbread man, a toy soldier, a ballerina, I've got one here, sort of a ballerina ornament, can be baptized to represent a person in your life and used the same way as a doll baby. Sometimes they call it a voodoo doll. And after the blessing of the ornament, you give it a name of your target. You actually name it who you're going after and anoint it with the appropriate oil for the situation. Another type of glass ornament that isn't used just at Christmas, but are also witch balls. Some people call them fairy balls, sometimes Yule balls, rare occasion. A witch ball is a pretty bauble, usually painted, but it's not opaque. You can still see through them. They're designed to ensnare evil spirits and energies and protect the space they're hung in. They look just like fancy glass Christmas ornaments with glass or thread fibers inside. And traditionally, they're hung in an eastern window to trap evil that wants to enter the house. Now let's talk about the star topper for the tree. You can anoint the star with Crown of Achievement, some call it Crown of Success, to bring in new ideas and methods for achieving your goals. So if you're unsure about your goals or still have obstacles to overcome before they can be realized, anoint it with things like road opening or open the gates. That way you can bring new things into the new year. Even if you don't have plans for them, you'll know that you'll be able to break open those barriers. Now let's talk about Christmas cards and wrapping paper. Cards and wrapping paper are the perfect vehicle for delivering a magical intention via sachet powders. You can do them for your loved ones or your enemies, it doesn't matter. The use of wrapping paper is first documented in ancient China, where paper was invented in the 2nd century BC. These modern patterned wrapping papers were introduced to America by the Hall brothers, which is Hallmark, around 1917. And the Kansas City stationery store had run out of traditional white, red, and green monocolored tissue papers and started selling these colorful envelope liners instead. Now we see Christmas cards. 3 most used sachet powders to use on Christmas cards are Love Attracting, Money Drawing, and Hot Foot. So the first two are kind of self-explanatory: Money Drawing, Love Attracting. Hot Foot powder is used to force someone out of your life, to drive them away. Traditionally, it's implemented by laying it where an enemy would walk, meaning you poison them through the feet. It's called poisoning through the feet. And this is a magical or psychic poisoning. It's not a literal one. Its ingredients are hot by nature, not toxic. So things like cayenne, red peppers, black pepper, etc. If you can't place hot foot where someone will walk, it can be implemented by other means, which means to us, holiday cards and wrapping paper can be used. So for holiday cards, lightly dust the back side of the card with sachet powders of your purpose and blow off the excess. When your target opens and reads the card, trace elements transfer onto their hands, which delivers your magical intention. Now, love letters are often dusted with sachet powders, a similar act to like perfuming a letter. You might put money drawing powder on a card that you've addressed to your boss or manager in hopes of sort of receiving a raise or recognition, something that would lead to financial gain. Include a little boss control powder to sort of seal the deal, get them to do what you want them to do. You can send a holiday card to an enemy dusted with hot foot powder, either with your name or anonymously, depending on your individual situation. It all depends on your relationship with them and whether they would want one from you. So if they truly are an enemy, it's better to send it without a return address, so they'll think it's just a random card from someone and they'll actually keep it. So keep in mind, there are many types of sachet powder being used to deliver your magic. We simply covered the top 3. But remember, do not go overboard dusting holiday cards, because the post office does not like powder in the mail. That is like a no-no. It is a big warning sign to them. They don't know what you're doing. To them, it's something, it could be nefarious. Do not send powder in the mail. You lightly dust it and blow it off. Wrapping paper. You could dust wrapping paper in the same way you would cards. However, there's still a few extra tricks we have to enforce when you magically fix gifts. First of all, it's better to dust a package after you've completely wrapped it. Dusting it beforehand, you can leave evidence of dust underneath the tape on the paper, showing your fingerprints, which they can use against you. Not only giving away what you've done, but it leaves behind very clear images of what you're doing. So you would lightly dust the outside of the package, not the inside. A good example of how to use hot foot powder would be on a roommate that needs to go but just won't move out. So you actually gift them something with hot foot powder on it, just a little bit, to with the intention of that once they receive it and they get on their hands, that they will want to go. So another way to fix wrapping paper is to write a petition on the reverse side of the paper. Make sure to use wrapping paper that has a white side on the reverse, which most do, and proceed to write out your petition. But you're not going to use pencil. You're going to use something like white chalk that no one can see, or just use your finger to continuously write on there to put that intention inside it. It's on the inside of the paper. Wrapping paper magic can deliver quite a punch, especially if the gift is left under the tree for a period of time, which allows your spell work to seep into the household. Now, to go a step further, choose really expensive paper, things that are beautiful, because some people will carefully unwrap something so they can keep the paper. And that way, if they're keeping it in the house all the way till the next year, your magic is in their house till the next year. So that's a way to use wrapping paper and holiday cards by dusting them with powder. Tricks that people would have no idea that you had done. Okay, so now let's talk about Christmas cookies. So a few weeks before you start your holiday baking, you should fix a jar of special sugar to use in cookies and cakes that you intend to gift to other people. Sugar magic is also known as sweetening magic, and the concept is pretty simple. Using sugary ingredients to help sweeten up people and energies to move in your favor. You make sweet energy instead of things that are mundane or sour. Think it's sweet makes things sweet. So we can sweeten bosses, landlords, neighbors, co-workers, disgruntled ex-friends, loved ones, whoever. Somebody you want to make sweeter. And they can be used to get these other people in your favor. Like maybe you want someone to hire you or love you. There's a long history and many traditions of using sweet things in magic, whether it be honey or sugar or fruits. There comes a time in all of our lives when things tend to go a little bit sour and they need to be sweetened up a bit. So this type of magic is also known as hiding things in plain sight, where you would use everyday objects that no one would suspect were magically hijacked, like using sugar in a sugar bowl or adding a dash of honey in someone's tea. So for this kind of work, you can use a simple sugar bowl, a sealed container of some sort, or even a full bag of sugar. Write out your petition in plain language. Fold that paper towards you 3 times. Folding your petition away from you is about moving things out of your life. So towards you is to bring them in. Place that petition in the bottom of the container you've chosen and seal it up. So every day for the next week or 2, pick up the sugar container and shake it and reinstate your intention. So when a few weeks have passed and the container of sugar is imbued with all these magical intentions, it's your time to use the sugar in your baking. So sweetening a boss or a co-worker is one of the most often used forms of sugar work, especially when it deals with making sweets you're going to give to other people, especially during the holidays, because it's not unusual to bring in sweets to work during that time. But if you don't have any baking skills, it's okay. Simply buy like a tin of Christmas cookies and sprinkle them with sugar, because they're already fixed with sugar. So just put a little bit extra in there and no one knows there's something you've added to it. They won't stick to the cookies, or they'll just be in the tin, but the energy and the magic you place into the sugar will be present inside the tin, surrounding the cookies that are in there. Making your own gingerbread men and gifting them to others can deliver quite a magical holiday punch. If you've got enough focus and intention, you're going to create a voodoo doll with this gingerbread man. So you recite your spell or prayer or petition the entire time you're mixing and measuring the ingredients. And you cut when you're cutting out the figures and you're finally decorating them, if you choose to decorate them. Some people don't. And while your prayer may have an overall theme while mixing your batch, decorating each cookie allows you to place a specific focus on each person you'll be gifting them to. Write each person's name in frosting to make sure each one gets delivered to your particular target. Gingerbread men cookies can be used in the same way as a doll baby. For this type, you're not going to gift the cookie, you're going to keep it. So if we're working on an enemy, bless the cookie in the name of the person you're going to be working on. And then every day for 9 days, break off a piece of the cookie and grind it with your fingers until it's nothing but crumbles and dust. And then you store these crumbles in a plastic bag or something, or a paper bag. And when the 9 days is up, take the bag of crumbles and dispose of it off of your property. One method is to take it into a public restroom and flush the contents, not the bag, just the contents down the toilet. You can also go the old school way and take it to the crossroads and simply dump it out there and walk away without looking back. You might also use the cookie crumbles to load the bottom of a skull candle in order to influence your target. An alternative method might be to bite off a section of the cookie every day for a specific number of days. Chew it up and spit it out. Do it outside of your property line. Spit it off your property line. So the last thing I want to talk about using things as dolls and effigies is using an elf on a shelf. And it can be used the same way as a doll baby or a voodoo doll. You can even fix the elf with oils. Don't use things that are too strong though, because you don't want them to detect them. And then mail it to someone as a gift so its presence is now inside their house. So these are so many things you can do at Christmas time. You see, there's almost every form of magic can be implemented in one way or another in a holiday gift giving. It just takes a little bit of creativity on your part to adjust your magic to your own situation. So just remember all these neat ways you can actually use Christmas packages and ornaments and Christmas cards and Christmas cookies and all these things to deliver your magic to get the things that you want. So I hope you've enjoyed this. This has been Christmas Conjure, and I am G with Aroma Juice Botanica. Happy holidays.